Yes, and they cannot discuss it because they're heavily implicated in the entire crisis. And the United Nations has said, and I've repeated this on several occasions, that this is the worst refugee and internally displaced persons crisis since the conclusion of World War II, some 70 years ago. So therefore, the root of the problem is that the United States and its allies within NATO have waged wars against people throughout the region. Now we see so many refugees coming from Syria because of the 4.5-year long war that's been waged by the United States proxies inside Syria that has literally driven out millions of people from inside the country. And this is true of Libya, it's true of Nigeria, it's true of Central Asia, Afghanistan, Pakistan. So this is a crisis that was created by Washington and Wall Street.
And James, they kind of go on, and this video is available. And we'll link to it, just like we link to everything we mention here on New World Next Week. But I find that this perhaps pithy way kind of breaks down when we look at these emotional ploys being put out to break it down of what the migrant crisis really is, James.
Well, yes. I mean, this is a good way of looking at it because all of the white nationalists like to talk about the white genocide that's coming and things like that without looking at the actual genocidal actions that are being committed by the military at the behest of the political puppets puppeteered by the banksters for their own purposes, destroying entire nations, bombing them to smithereens, ripping apart the fabric of their societies like in Libya, like in Syria, like in all of these other targets. Of course, there's going to be floods of people escaping these countries. Of course, this is exactly what's going to happen. And of course, that's going to create political turmoil in Europe. I think that's part of the plan as well. I mean, I think all of this is part of the same plan. And I think we have to understand it as such. The enemies are not these migrants. The enemies are the people who have created this situation and the people who are funding the wars that create this situation. So let's keep our eyes on the prize here. I think the real enemy continues to be the people at the very top who are pushing and pulling the strings of power to make these events possible.
I do find it interesting, James, that just over these years, as kind of the EU and other nations have kind of become nationalized, and you see kind of this racist rhetoric kind of building up, just at the very same moment that they know the powers that be, who of course fund both sides and use that strategy attention, like, man, we're going to radical, all these nationalist people are going to get all racist, and then we're going to hit them with tons of migrants. Their heads are going to, it's that perfect kind of chaotic situation. James, I find one synchronistic kind of interesting note that just as the migrant crisis hits the papers here in the States is just as we're looking at the 10th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. So I'll put those synchronicities aside, James, and we'll move to our third and final story this week. And I'll note, and I feel like it's worth noting and trumpeting, all through 2015, we've covered positive news stories, and we kind of came up with hashtag good news next week. And it's an easy way, I think, to kind of put our money where our mouth is, so to speak, and talk about solutions and talk about ways that we are winning. And a couple of weeks ago, James, we highlighted a protest song against the Unilever Corporation and their poisonous ways. So I think this week we should do it again. And unfortunately, it comes with the downside in that they are being investigated for this good news work. Canadian public servant investigated for his anti-Tory song, Harper Ban. And we can grab this from the National Post, James. An Ottawa federal scientist is being investigated for breaching the public service